Part 62. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 616. One bedroom was renovated. After Yanj got the key, he took Fei Jiao to the house and set up the house with Fei Jiao extremely romantically. Two people were blowing the balloons in the room. You said he saw my confession, would he be happy to see everything in this room? He will die happily. Fei Jiao was more certain, and she would choose to surprise him on his birthday. Looking at the big, tender bed arranged by her, he could already imagine the beautiful picture of hugging her rolling on this bed in the future. He knew that she had been going to that private psychiatrist recently, and her condition was much better than before. He has always been thoughtful and powerful in her mouth, which can make her very secure. She is really getting better. He is no longer her nightmare, but a man who has made her happy, secure, and expectant. When I heard her in those recordings, I asked again and again, do you say, will he marry me? Our gap is so big. I have such a thing, will he marry me? Will he abandon me and loathe me, will he throw me away like trash? This is her only trouble now. Fei Jiao secretly called his grandpa, I look at a young daughter-in-law and want to marry her home. Grandpa, do you support me? His grandfather loves him most. What he wants from his grandfather is nothing, this time is no exception. He boasted of the small daughter-in-law who was looking at him, just like the sky. The grandpa on the other side of the phone laughed and laughed, your little daughter-in-law is still a school bully, can you catch it? If you can catch people, you will never harm other girls in the future, of course, grandpa support you. This is the last one, Fei Jiao said, it is my last woman, except for her, I will not want another woman. Grandpa Fei is very supportive of Fei Jiao, then you cheer, if you are short of money, say a word, grandpa sponsors you to chase her. With the support of Grandpa Fei, Fei Jiao is full of confidence. At that time, on the last day of the month, Yanj entangled with Fei Yun's on the big bed arranged with Fei Jiao. She rode on him, using that weaving, dismantling, and weaving, and only today gave him the scarf around his neck, give you a last chance to regret it, are you really not willing to continue? Fei Yun's didn't move. He sighed and looked at her helplessly and cozily, as if she was a rogue kid, if you say it for a month, it is a month. I am a credible person. She froze, and then wept loudly, you said that I was contracted for a month, but now, I will use this house to contract you for another month. Why not agree? He didn't speak, kissed her lips, and tossed again, she was crying all the way, crying in his arms. When she whimpered, it made people feel sorry for her. She cried so much that it made his heart even more uncomfortable. He almost wobbled out of the room. He was really afraid of himself, and he couldn't help but promise her for another second. In the evening, Fei Jiao waited for a long time and did not see Yanj go upstairs. He clearly saw her enter the small building, where did she go? Confused, he went downstairs, but saw Yanji sitting on the sofa dazed. He stepped up and asked her, what happened? After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 617. Yanj shook his head quickly, it's all right. At the end, Chao Fei Jiao smiled, it's time, I forgot to go to class, sorry. He saw her smile brighter than ever, and looked at him reluctantly. She was the best at disguising herself, so she couldn't bear it, she must have been stimulated. Fei Jiao pondered carefully and asked the song carefully when he went upstairs, what's wrong? Are you so unhappy? Did you quarrel with your classmates? Or are there any academic difficulties? Yanj shook his head, turned his head and smiled at him again, it's okay, you, how good your mind is on learning, leave the teacher's business alone. She had been babbling for an hour of class, and several times he saw her staring at the lesson plan. He couldn't bear it, and continued to ask, Mr. Su, I'm your student. The students will do whatever they want to do for you. Tell your students anything you want. Yan Ji looked up at him, staring at him, and tears fell on his face. Fei Jiao scrambled to help her wipe her tears. Don't cry, keep on. He was so distressed by her tears. She was stiff, and the next moment, she suddenly pinched his neck and continued to cry. The sobbing voice was obviously trying to suppress. I think I'm very bad. She rested her head on his chest and choked, what to do, I don't think I will have any future in my life. I have no future. How can you? You have, he thought she was suddenly stimulated by what she said, and hugged her tightly in his arms. He calmed down, I have been by your side, I've been by your side. But you're just my student, and you won't marry me. Yan Ji held his chest tightly with his fingers and wept lowly, crying, in my life, I can't be like a normal girl. Now. He heard her cry, and felt that his heart was about to break. Mian, I'm marrying you. I already told my grandfather that you should be my daughter-in-law. He likes you and is afraid of you. I don't agree, Mian, you are so good, I worry every day that you will not agree, and always worry that others will rob you and me. Mian, as long as you promise, we can get married right away. He never thought that he would get married at such a young age. He always felt that he would be an unmarried man like his second uncle. Of course, the second uncle's sexual orientation was different. However, nowadays, his mind is full of protecting, petting, and loving the person in his arms, and petting does not feel tired for a lifetime. She seemed to be stunned by his words. She looked up at him with a stunned look, and there were tears on her face. Such a small appearance really seemed silly. He was also very happy. These words were finally spoken. Now just seeing her unexpected surprise, he feels extremely satisfied and extremely happy. The next moment, her tears fell faster, she reached out and covered her mouth, crying and laughing, aren't you coaxing me, you must be coaxing me, we are now a pure teacher-student relationship. You and I know I'm sick, how can you like me, you can't like me. Fei Jiao hugged her and lowered her head and kissed her forehead, I have always liked you, and my thoughts make you become my tutor just to see you. Warning, quite dog blood, really, ha, but I wrote it myself. Hi. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 618. Fei Jiao clings to her words tightly, can't wait to put her into his own flesh and flesh with him. Mian, I have never disliked you, you do nt know how dazzling you are, I am every day every night, what I miss is you, Mian, I always dream of marrying you. She laughed at him, probably moved. She wanted to talk with a smile, but she cried with a mouth. She cried and couldn't speak, she couldn't even speak, and listened to his confession. Mian, don't cry, it was me that was not good, I was too young and naive at that time. From now on, I will never treat you like that again, Mian, I will definitely treat you well. Will you give me a chance to take care of you? He held her face in both hands, and kissed her lips carefully. But the next moment, Yan Ji was frightened and usually pushed him away, took a few steps back to the wall, and asked him with a look of vigilance and confusion, You must be lying to me, you must be lying to me, you cannot marry I have become what they are now. How could you marry me, you would never marry me. There were still tears on her face. When she looked at her, she was terrified and alert, like a wounded beast in a corner, and never dared to accept anyone's offer. Her muttering words made him sore. He took a few steps to take her hand, and took out the wedding ring that she had been optimistic about. Mian, I'm not kidding, I prepared all the wedding rings all right, you see, this is my custom made, with your and my name in it. She stared at the wedding ring in his hand, her voice softly drifting, and asked indefinitely, are you really going to marry me? Fei Jiao held the crumbling villain in his arms and focused on, huh. Yanj cried again, and stuttered, well, then, would you give me a wedding? The kind of wedding that is very lively, there are friends, classmates, weddings with many people. Of course it will, Fei Jiao said, I will give you a particularly lively, particularly grand wedding. How is it possible? She cried and cried, then laughed and reached out and pushed his chest, you and I have not reached the age of marriage, and your parents can't promise you to marry me. She smiled and laughed, tears slipped in her eyes, but the smile was still hanging on her face. Looking up, she smiled at him, and the tears in her eyes were like transparent light, making her eyes brighter and brighter. He rolled his throat, lowered his head, kissed her teary eyes, and pecked off the tears on her face, before slowly moving to her lips again. Mian, he kissed her lips and murmured, I just want to marry you immediately, hug you for a lifetime, spoil you forever, never let go of you again, Mian. His tongue came softly into her mouth, entangled like nostalgia, swallowing all the sweet fragrance from her mouth into his own mouth. Such kisses, day and night longing, now finally get what they want. However, not enough, so a little bit is far from enough to quench his thirst. His movements became more and more urgent, he touched her chest with one hand and under her waist with the other. He didn't open his eyes until the coolness in her eyes fell on the corners of his lips. Keeping her eyes closed and letting him play with them, but the bottom of those eyes kept tearing. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 619. The long eyelashes trembled as if trying to endure something that scared her. Her pale face was even more fragile, soaked with tears, like a small white flower that was hit by frost and rain. Fei Jiao's brain was agitated and suddenly remembered that day, it seemed that way. It was as if he had been splashed with cold water, and he was immediately awake. Perceived that he stopped moving, her eyes trembled, her eyes still covered with tears, but the corners of her lips were tilted, but she tried to laugh, and she smiled and asked him, is that so you can marry me? Her voice was soft and thin, but she was extremely babble. She tried to smile brightly, in fact, her smile was really bright. With tears in her smile, all kinds of customs are not as glorious as this moment. But his heart was hurting. Just listening to her said that it hurt her heart. He embraced her and pressed his face to her face, Mian, I want to marry you, not just talking. Then, when are you marrying me? Yan Ji sounded with a smile in his voice, but this soft laugh made him even more uncomfortable listening. When you want to marry me, I will marry anytime. We can start the wedding first, a grand and lively wedding. When you reach my age, we will get a certificate, okay? She looked up and looked at him, her eyes timid and expecting, really? Really? Will we still take a wedding photo? Otherwise, we will take a wedding photo tomorrow, and we will have the wedding the day after tomorrow. She hurriedly said, and then shook her head in a panic. It's too early. There is no time for you to hesitate. It's too early, let's forget, wait a minute. He kissed her lips and said, tomorrow, let's take a wedding photo and get the wedding the day after tomorrow. Do you have any friends or family you would like to invite? Yan Ji stunned him in surprise. Aren't you kidding me? Fei, aren't you really joking? What do you do if you regret it later? No, there will be no regrets. I can marry you when I dream, and I will never regret it. She still didn't believe it. She took his neck and put her head against his chin. I must be dreaming, I'm so bad, how can you marry me, it must be a dream. He took her face and pecked her, It's not dreaming, let's go, let's discuss it, and who we will ask for the day after tomorrow. The young man said just to do it, and when he heard Yanj said timidly that he did not have good classmates and friends, he was not surprised. It's okay. At that time, the bridesmaid will treat my friend's younger sister well. She is very nice. She always calls my brother. She will be very willing to call your sister-in-law. She laughed as she listened, fluttering her eyelashes, and asked him softly, really? He wiped the tears on her face and looked at her smile and nodded, really? At this moment, he even thought, as long as she can smile so happily forever, that is, even let him die. Both of them are too young, so Yan Ji has some sloppy suggestions, otherwise don't let the elders be present. She is afraid that her parents will think she doesn't learn to mess up the relationship and then kill her. Fei Jie was also very pleased with this proposal. After all, his parents couldn't get it done, but he could call Grandpa and let Grandpa do it. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 620. Pre-wedding photos generally require an appointment, but Fei Jiao smashed down the money, not only did not need to line up, but also reserved a room. Yan Ji could not decide what wedding photos to choose, and he suggested that a variety of models be available. Yan Ji was so happy to hear the words, there was a tenderness in the eyebrows, and Fei Jiao's heart was faint. Suddenly he felt that he could get married one day earlier, and he couldn't wait to hold her in his arms immediately. When taking photos, the photographer has been complimenting the bride for being so beautiful. Although knowing this kind of words is only a compliment, Fei's heart is still very proud and happy. He is really the most beautiful bride, no one can match her. After 3 wedding dresses were taken, a phone call came in. Fei Jiao looked at it. It was his father's phone. He signaled his little bride to wait a moment and took the mobile phone to the outside. After Fei Jiao left, Yan Ji asked the photographer to take a break, and she took a skirt and walked in front of the mirror. The girl in the mirror, the most beautiful age of a real woman. Pureness and charmingness blend together. Such a face, men don't like it, it seems to be really good. A man appeared behind the woman in the mirror. She asked with a smile, Jiayu, does this look good? However, he looked up and found that it was not Fei Jiao who had left. Standing next to her was Fei Yunzi. When she saw Fei Yun's, her face turned white, and her smile became vigilant. She backed away from him. You, what are you doing here? Jiao is coming back right away. You, what do you want to do? He stared at her darkly, and heard the word Jiao mentioned in her mouth. He sneered, pinching her wrist and heading out. What are you doing? You let go of me, you let go of me. Call again, believe it or not, I'll call my good nephew now. When she heard this, her face turned white, and although she was frightened and scared, she was still pulled forward by him. Looking at a door with a meeting room affixed to it, she grabbed the door armrest and courageously said to him, You, what you have to say here is also possible, where are you going to pull me? He simply pushed the conference room open, saw no one in it, and pulled her in to lock the door. Yanj was yanked on the wall and he cried in shock, Second uncle, what are you going to do? What? He walked into her with a sneer, Be you. He squeezed her chin, forcing her to look up. Why, it's not enough to hook up with me, but also go to hook up with my nephew. Do you think I can't satisfy you? Or do I think my nephew is alive? What are you talking about? Her sobbing weeping sounded like a cat crying. She could hold people's hearts, and she agreed to argue, I didn't. You didn't. He yanked her skirt down and pulled down, I really underestimated you. Yesterday you still begged you to ask me for you, now you are taking a wedding photo with my nephew. You, this woman, is really good at knowing that I can't marry you, so I can catch up with my nephew, and just want to marry into the Fei family. He ripped apart her wedding dress violently, pulled it up without tearing it up, tore her skirt up, tore her inside, pressed her on the large table in the conference room, and entered violently. Yan Ji cried out of breath, and his sobbing voice kept begging him, second uncle, you let me go, please, please let me go, Jiao will see. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 621. Uncle, obviously you said that yesterday was the last time. You won't harass me anymore. How can you not talk to Count? How can you treat me like this? Since you dare to hook up with Jiao, you should know what's going on. Fei Yun's didn't have any pity for Xiangziu, and her fingers hit him to grab him, in exchange for his rough treatment. I didn't. She didn't dare to cry even if she was crying, for fear of being heard by people outside. She begged him with tears in her face, I want to marry Jiao, I really want to marry him. Do NT do this to me, please, uncle, do NT do this to me, how will I face Jiao in the future? At this time she was still saying the word Jiao. Fei Yun's heart was really angry. But she broke up yesterday, and today she can find the next family. The main thing is his nephew. This woman, looking weak, is deep enough. What did he say about raising him in the house, and what did he like about him? Really, he had a dog and was touched by her words. He couldn't sleep for a night, even tangled, what to do when he fell to the ground. He was full of her eyes, but this woman was a good one. After finishing the wave with him, she immediately hooked up with his nephew. I got married at a young age. Is marriage just for marriage? It's not like playing each other. Really, he was furious. His anger was vented on her body. Having been together for a month, it was clear what he was sensitive to and where it was most likely to trigger an understanding. But after a few tossings, her crying taste changed, and the whimpering of tenderness turned slowly, listening to dissatisfaction. He sneered and asked her, I didn't have the face to see my nephew, but my body cooperated with me so easily. You have such a bad heart. My nephew can satisfy you. Jiao and I are not what you think. You can't say that to me and Jiao. She cried with tears in her face, wheezing. The tone was unequal, but the words she spoke were still so resolute, without any concession. He impatiently said to her, Jiao, Genema, as if she and Fei Jiao had been in love for many years. It was only one day that Jiao made him irritated when he listened. He interrupted her, what's that like? Isn't this kind of thing right and left? You just like to use your body to seduce a man? Your body is hungry and you begged me, why bother to be near? She was panting and panting, but still not let up, just over and over again, begging him, you let go of me, you let go of me, Jia, you will see that tomorrow I am his wife, and I have nothing to do with you, it's okay, you let go of me. He listened to her, and wished that Fei Jiao could appear to smash her in front of her. He leaned down and pinched her neck, do you still want to marry Jiao? You don't even look at yourself now, you want to marry someone else. He really hated it. As soon as he thought that he was having trouble sleeping for her while she was hooking up with his nephew, he gritted his teeth and really wanted to strangle this careless woman. She fell her head under the edge of the table, and was struck by him like this, but instead of struggling, she closed her eyes and remained motionless. Waiting for him to strangle her? Still feel that he dare not strangle her. Fei Yun stared at her ashen face, instead of being happy, but a kind of irritability that struck his throat. Don't you think that Jiao will marry you? Don't dream without my permission, Mrs. Fei, you can't do it in your life. Warning, the dog's blood is still falling, please ask the fairies to prepare an umbrella. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 622. Yan's eyelashes trembled, she heard the words, slowly opened her eyes, tears slipped from the corner of her eyes, and fell into her hair. She stared at him, lost her soul, and sullenly staring at him. However, such a glance was instantaneous, and after a moment she looked disgusted. It was you who forced me, you threatened me, and you said that, as long as I promise you a month, you will not entangle me again. You obviously said these things, obviously you also said don't try to get a diamond ring from you, and you won't interfere if I don't make a boyfriend. Where am I wrong? She asked him in a desperate voice, desperate but hated. Where am I wrong? Why are you doing this to me? Today is my wedding day with Jiao, I will marry tomorrow, give it to him, I have nothing to do with you. Why do you treat me like this? Why do you say that I am cheap? Why am I cheap? You are the one who entangles me, and it is you. At the end, she said, her voice was full of heartbreaking nagging. If you are rich and powerful, you can say what you want and what you want to do. What do you think of me? Do you think I am a dog? Fei Yun's, I hate you, I hate you. She lifted her feet and kicked him, and when his restraint was a little loose, she rolled off the table and fell to the ground. She held her own wedding dress in her hands, squatted on the table, and looked at the squat in horror. The man staring down at her. Neighing drew away all her courage and strength, she shrank under the table, shivering consciously behind her, she glared at him, begging, don't entangle me, please, you said you just want to sleep with me. You never thought about marrying me. Why do you even bother me? She couldn't help crying and fell under the table. How can you do this? How can you do this? Fei Yun's held her out, because you provoke Fei's family. He said, when you provoke Jiao, you should know the situation now. Don't expect to marry into the Fei family. He put her on the table, and touched her fingers on her smooth and curvy back. The thing with Jiao, it is best you say it yourself, you don't tell Jiao, I will tell him. He looked at her face for a moment, pale and bloodless, and his anger was even worse. Sneer, why, don't you say that you and Jiao are true love, not to sleep? He touched her face with her finger and pressed her pale lips. You want to be Mrs. Fei, why don't you please me? Well, please me, or maybe I promise to give you a diamond ring, but you can save the country with this curve now. The way, really, makes me despise you. She suddenly opened her mouth and bit his finger, and she glared at him with hate. I hate you, whine. He chuckled softly, and didn't care if her fingers were bitten by her already bleeding. When she let loose, he pulled out his fingers and wiped the blood from her fingers to her lips. He seemed very satisfied with her bright lip color. Appreciated carefully, which helped her to wear a wedding dress. This suit is really suitable for you. It looks so beautiful, like a hibiscus. He wiped the tears on her face with his belly. However, it's better when you do wear clothes, mine. Nephew, he is still too stupid. Don't lie to him if you think he is stupid. You're best, don't challenge my bottom line anymore. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 623. Fei Yun's own clothes were neat and tidy, and he looked really elegant. When he said this, he was elegant and calm for a while, forming a sharp contrast with her Wolverine. After he said these words, he gave her a glance, turned, and left gracefully. Yan Ji was sitting on the table, reaching out to wipe the traces on her arms and neck, weeping and crying, Jiao, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But the more clear those marks are, the more they are not clean. She stared at the marks on her arm, and the sadness on her face was gradually replaced by despair. The next moment, she climbed down the table and walked towards the windowsill step by step. The windowsill was a bit high, she couldn't climb up. She just returned and moved a chair. She stood on the chair to open the window, slowly closed her eyes, and murmured, Jiao, next life, I will be your wife in the next life. Spoil me all my life, now, I really can't stand it, it's too painful, it's too painful to live. Suddenly someone hugged her waist and hugged her tightly, Mian Mian, Mian Mian. Yan Ji heard this voice and turned his head in surprise and horror, why are you here? She glanced at the open small conference room door in the side corner of the conference room, and tears fell down again. Just now, did you see it? Fei Jiao nodded sternly. I'm sorry, Yan Ji said with tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. She said 3 sorry in a row and turned her head toward the window. Fei Jiao saw that she had to jump down, and hurriedly hugged her body towards the ground. The chair fell to the ground for an instant, and the two fell to the ground without saying, and Fei Jiao's forehead hit the table leg. Fortunately, the legs of the table are round, and there is no broken skin. Yanj broke free from him, you let go of me, I'm not worth your marriage at all, you let go of me, let go of me. You can let me go, I can't stand it, I really can't stand it, home Jia, please let me be relieved. Fei Jiao hugged her tightly, and despite her struggles of kicking and fighting, she did not let go. Mian Mian, this is not your fault, this is not your fault, you should not punish others for your fault yourself. He pressed her head to his chest, his voice soft, but extremely firm, Mian Mian, I like you, I want to marry you, no one can separate us, don't be afraid, I won't, I hate you. I like you. I can't wait to hold you in my palm. I can't wait to kill anyone who insults you. If you want to die, I will die with you. Mian Mian, it's my fault to say I'm sorry, but I didn't protect you. There was a cry in his voice. Yan Ji's hand pressed on his lips, his cold fingers, but softly made him want to put her fingers in his mouth at this moment, so as not to accidentally break. It has nothing to do with you, Jia, it has nothing to do with you, it's my fault, it's my own dirty, disgusting, I'm so dirty, Jia, I really can't stand it, you let me go, okay? I don't want you to touch me like this at all. She whispered loudly, but the words spoken were like a knife, stuck in his heart, making his heart hurt more than ever. You're not dirty, you're not dirty, you're dirty, you're dirty. Those who are thinking are dirty. What you said, we're getting married, you can't break your word, you can't leave me alone. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Weipang. Chapter 624. The man in his arms finally quieted down. She raised her head slightly, looking at him with tears in her eyes, and said gently, do you really don't care? Do you want to marry me like this? He hugged her tightly, his voice was firm, of course, we are going to get married and live a happy life together. I will love you and protect you. Mian Mian, Mian Mian, it's not your fault, it's not your fault, I will only distress you, you should have told me. He had just stood in a closet next door. At first, he thought she had an affair with his second uncle, and was very angry. He also wanted to know what they would do, so he didn't rush out. But later, the more he heard the anger, especially the cry of her helpless sorrow, he wished to rush out to protect her immediately. But she was begging her elder uncle not to tell him, listening to her always worried that he would be aware of it, and his hand fell on the door again. He couldn't break, he thought, he wanted to give her one last bit of dignity. After all, he would be particularly saddened by this when he saw it. She was tortured outside the door, and across the door he seemed to be in hell. He never expected that the second uncle he admired would do such a disgusting and nasty thing. He squeezed the doorknob tightly, listening to her crying for mercy, his heart broke. He thought that it was good for her to be unknowing. but now, he suddenly regretted his hesitation and didn't show up. He should go out in time to stop the second uncle's kind of things to the people in his arms. She said sorry to him, making him slap with regret instantly. Obviously they are sorry for her Faye family. Obviously she was the most injured. He hugged her tightly in his arms. Mian, I will protect you forever with me in the future. The wedding photos must not be able to continue. Fei Jiao took Yanj back to his sports car and did not return to the hotel. Instead, he went to a room where Yanj said he would pick up a relative. The room was filled with balloons and scarlet letters, and even the sheets and quilts were replaced with red quilts. He put her on the bed and knelt beside the bed to comfort her. Mian, are you hungry? Can you eat something? What do you want to eat? Yan Ji closed his eyes and shook his head. Jia you, let's go, I'm so dirty, I'm really dirty and dirty, don't touch me, don't talk to me, don't see me again, I don't want you to see myself like this. You are not dirty, you are not dirty, you are not dirty at all. He hugged her and kissed the tears on her face. Mian, those people are dirty, not you, don't say this yourself. Yanj couldn't help but cried and said, you don't even know, I'm all his stuff in my body, I'm dirty and dirty. Jiao, can you go, please, you let us go, I can't wash my dirty clothes? I'll wash it for you, I'll wash it for you. He helped her take off her wedding dress, and helped her take off her coat. Her soft body was lying on a big red bed, just like a porcelain doll with beautiful beauty. On the white skin, the mottled marks appeared shocking, and many places were even swollen. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 625. At that time, Fei Jiao could only hear outside voices, and saw these traces on Yanj with his own eyes, only to know how cruel he was. He was really anxious to go to work with his elder uncle right away. Seeing the song shrinking, he was obviously afraid that he would see him. He resisted the anger and grief in his heart and picked her up and went to the bathroom. He helped her clean her body carefully, and helped her clean up that place. She kept her eyes closed, her body shuddering, her fingers pinched tightly together. She was nervous, afraid. She must be extremely helpless at this moment. He bowed his head, kissed her face, kissed the bruises on her body, and even her flowers. He held the kiss slowly, the pious look was like kissing some holy place. He moves very softly, like kissing a fragile porcelain doll. His expression is focused and infatuated. He muttered and said to her over and over again, Mian, you are so beautiful, you are so good, can marry you my blessing, I will be good to you, I will love you forever, and I will protect you from now on, I will always protect you. His kisses were lingering, and he hugged her, petting him softly, as if every attack was to please her, and every time to pet her. Mian, I like you, I really, especially like you. Tomorrow we will get married, and we will be one family in the future. You and me, our two families, will depend on each other in the future, regardless of each other. Mian, you are so good, so good. Unlike the fierce with Fei Yuan's, this time Fei Jiao and her are like a trickle, gentle, long stream, a love. She can even feel his infatuation with himself. What men like most is to be a prince who can step on colorful clouds to rescue the fallen princess. They all want to be a savior subconsciously. Men who have experienced strong winds and waves are no exception, and young calves who have just debuted are no exception. Yan Ji rounded Fei Jiao's neck, resting his head on his shoulder, and his face was crimson, as if he had been fascinated by his tenderness. Afterwards, he knelt beside the bed and said to Yanj, Mian, I will pick up my male companions early in the morning, and the bridesmaids and makeup artists will come early. You can't oversleep at that time. Yanj lay on the quilt, turned his head and smiled shyly at him. He took her face and kissed reluctantly, I want to sleep here with you tonight. She blinked and whispered, no. Then I will bear it tonight. He was very energetic, and just the one time just awakened the in his body. Fearing that she was disgusted with this kind of thing, he didn't dare to do whatever he wanted. After venting it once, he didn't dare to continue. Even if he was uncomfortable, he just endured. Mian, you are my woman, and I will protect you in the future. She raised her head slightly and kissed him under the chin. His patience shattered between her kisses. Holding her face and kissing again, lingering in her mouth, this sweet smell, he felt that he would not be greasy in his whole life. Mian, you will be the most beautiful bride.